Hi, this is Kay. If you've looked around my channel, you probably see that I have a ketogenic playlist, and currently my husband and I are doing really great on the ketogenic diet. Many years ago, we had to get hardcore into health food, super hardcore, since 1989. We cured the asthma that was killing him back then. We cured it real early on. And I've been through things like Lyme disease and other issues. And, we've been having to study like crazy since then. And I studied nutrition in high school and in college and then way outside of the box because what was inside of the box did not work. If we had done and taken the advice of what any doctors were trying to help us with at that time, way back when in the 80s, we'd be dead. And if we could have possibly survived, we'd be just miserable, couldn't even hold down jobs. It would have just been horrible. So we have had to be on a search that led us through vegetarianism, veganism, and then what you might call moderate paleo, and then hardcore paleo, and all the way through to ketogenic. And I've been meaning to redo a long video that was very extensive called How We Were Designed to Eat. It talks about history and all the in different societies and literally our guts and our teeth and our stomach and literally how we were designed to eat. And none of us know exactly how certain people eat or ate a very long time ago because we're not there. We can, get information on it and hope it's pretty good, but we just can't know 100% for sure. And if we weren't there, we're not 100% sure. But we want to recompare a lot of the different types of diet according to how our bodies work. And I would like to revisit vegetarianism, including lacto-ovo or lacto-or-ovo, pescatarians, vegans, and the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is not a consideration. Otherwise, you'll probably be, like most people, you'll probably be insulin resistant and diabetic or pre-diabetic really soon if you follow that. So we would like to clarify a lot of things. My husband's sitting here in the background, and I decided that to cover how we were designed to eat, it was just way too long. And that's why I needed to redo the video. And I'm going to do it in parts. So this is part one of how we were designed to eat. And I would like to just cover a few of the things that people often overlook about certain kinds of diets. First of all, if we're comparing distant places, both in geography or distant times, we don't have those same bodies. We don't have that same environment. We didn't have the same medications or lack thereof. This different, completely different diet, things like vaccines, different pollution, and different history compared to certain people who ate more purist diets. Like, like a lot of the rage is now, the carnivore diet. This is one of my main points I just couldn't wait to get out. The true carnivore diet, the people that truly existed or exist still in certain places on just animal products. They don't have the bodies or the environment of the Western civilization. They just don't. So we cannot pretend that we have their bodies and eat their diet and get the same results. And they didn't go just eat, go to the grocery store and eat, quote, muscle meat. They ate the whole animal and generally raw. And, these people that are having a certain level of success on the current popular carnivore diet have all different versions of it, just like all different versions exist of the vegetarian diet, the paleo diet, and the keto diet. And most of them don't eat it raw. Most of them, of course, cook it really well. Many of them just buy regular meat from the grocery store that's just muscle meat and not grass-fed. Some try to stick to grass-fed, and some even eat all raw meat or mostly raw. Well, if you don't eat the whole animal, like people really did, who really existed on just animal food, you can't expect the same results. I think that they're going to get a lot of good results because there's certain inflammatory things. If they came from the SAD or standard American diet, they probably, most of them, gave up a lot of junk, a lot of processed foods, and a lot of grains. And just getting rid of grains, I'm all for. They're very inflammatory and they cause insulin resistance in most people, especially as you get older. And that's a really big factor. So just like, okay, I'm going to go after the vegans at the same time. I'm going to go like the vegans on one end and the carnivores on the other. The vegans are eventually going to lack fat-soluble vitamins. They're eventually going to lack well-assimilated essential fatty acids because the essential fatty acids that come from plant food absolutely are extremely inefficient with the best digestion of converting to the types of essential fatty acids your brain and your cells actually use. Like the estimates are anywhere between 5 to at best 20%, for example, of flax oil omega-3s are really converted to EPA and DHA. Fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin A from plant food is a pre-vitamin A or a precursor, and your body doesn't do extremely well at, for example, at converting that to the fat-soluble vitamin A that you easily get from animal food. Vitamin K is another example of an extreme difference. The vitamin K in plant food is very fantastic, and it helps your blood clot when it should, or say like form scabs, and helps you not bleed to death. As a matter of fact, if you accidentally get poisoned by or get an overdose of something that's a blood thinner, or things like rat poison, which one of my dogs once did by accident in someone's cabin, besides throwing it up on, if you can get it on time, the antidote was massive doses of vitamin K. That's vitamin K1. Vitamin K2 is only from animal foods, or what vegans often consider, if they even know about it, what vegans often consider just a fermented food, like fermented soybeans or fermented chickpeas. But when you think about fermentation, it's kind of like nutritional yeast or probiotics that may be taken as a supplement, or honey. They're not, if you really think about it, they're not really vegan. And our guts aren't vegan because there's all kinds of bacteria involved in probiotics. And in fermentation, you're relying, and there are several things like I said, nutritional yeast and mushrooms. Are they all really completely plants? No.
And vegetables.
That's my husband chiming in.
Vegetables are not vegan.
That's right. They're not vegetarian.
Plants eat meat.
Yeah. And think about it.
Eat rotten meat.
If your body wastes away because you don't have the right nutrients, you're eating your body. Actually, the good part of ketogenic diets is when you stop burning the fat you ate, you actually cannibalize your own fat,
It's autophagy?
But yeah. Well, autophagy, that's basically just ketosis. In ketosis, when you've switched from burning the fat you ate to the fat on your body, you're literally cannibalizing your own fat. Autophagy is when, especially when you eat with a small eating window, you don't snack and you don't eat all day long, you try not to eat in a very big area of time in the day. After a certain amount of hours when you stop eating, then the rest of that time is called autophagy, which basically means it's recycling your own cells, getting rid of old junk and replacing it with new. And because the ketogenic diet is a high-fat diet, it's protein sparing. So when you run out of the calories to burn that you ate, instead of it burning your own protein, because the body can easily turn excess protein or your own protein to sugar to run on when it's not trained, when the mitochondria, the energy batteries inside the cells, are not trained to run on fat because they've run on sugar for so long, then what happens is, yeah, you are going to start eating your own protein in your own body. Well, how do we get going on this? We were talking about vegetables not being vegetarian.
Let's.
Would you like to say anything else about that?
Yeah, I would like to say, why don't we repackage this for the not the group of your audience is not as science. Science is not their hobby. Can you kind of go over that a little bit and kind of simplify?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that about all of them.
No, I'm just saying those.
Especially my precious dandelion people.
Yeah, I'm just saying for the group of people, maybe this is the first time watching one of your videos. How would you encapsulate this whole point?
This whole point is the vegan diet will have some deficiencies eventually. For example, vitamin B12 is stored in your liver, and a little bit's excreted at a time, and your body can store approximately 2 to 5 years worth of B12 in your liver. So a lot of people with a B12 deficiency don't actually have a lack of it, but after your liver excretes it, you have to absorb it in the weirdest place, in your colon, not your small intestines. And if your colon isn't great or you have leaky gut, there goes your B12, even for someone who is consuming B12. So the point is, the fat-soluble, these are the three things that are critical. The fat-soluble vitamins and the essential fatty acids are not efficient, and some aren't even in the right form. The vitamin K is where I left off when we got a little bit sidetracked. Vitamin K2 is the one that is either from animal foods, animal fat, or it's from fermented, usually chickpeas or soybeans when it's taken as a supplement. Vitamin K2 is the thing that drives the vitamin D to drive the calcium into the right places and out of the wrong places. Because one of the main sources of death, and sometimes sudden death with no previous symptoms, is heart failure from too much calcium in the heart. You can get too much calcium in the kidneys, or you can get too much calcium by way of arthritic deposits, constipation. And as a matter of fact, we can thank our first chiropractor we ever went to. You remember the experience when he put us on calcium?
We were never so sick in our whole lives.
Yeah, I said it glued my guts almost completely shut. It took about 5 years to unbloat and lose that constipation and that pressure and the abdominal distension in the guts
He basically
from calcium.
poisoned us.
Right.
He poisoned us.
And most people have plenty calcium, and what it is you just don't have the other mechanisms and the magnesium and other minerals or proper stomach acid, enough stomach acid to make the calcium and other minerals actually get assimilated, which means not absorbed, it means absorbed and then assimilated into the cells. So, okay. I would like to get back to that point on the left versus the point on the far right, okay?
The two spectrums.
On the far left, we have the extreme vegans who eventually, even though they've often eliminated a lot of junk in their diet, and then they began to do a lot of plants that are very cleansing to the lymph system and the digestive system, and you feel great, like we first did when we cured your asthma. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we cured it in 3 months. You never had asthma attacks since. He had the worst grass allergies his allergist ever saw, and he couldn't even go anywhere near a cut lawn, that was being cut. Not even up north where there was a very short growing season and not as much pollen accumulated, right? Mm-hmm. And of course that completely changed, and he could rub his face in the lawn after that, and it completely different. Now, so it worked for a while, and it did a whole lot of cleansing, and we were more or less pretty into health food before that, but we went much more hardcore. We did intestinal cleansing, and we did herbal cleansing and gland cleansing and other things just besides going vegan. And then eventually some nutrients ran out, and I remember this is what a lot of people say who have eaten flesh or animal foods for the first time after being a vegan and having, we had, I'm sure, omega-3 deficiencies. they'll say they ate that first bite of meat or that first piece of fish and felt great. We started eating fish and felt so much better.
Yeah.
Our brains and our energy and our mental state felt so much better right after the first day. Mm-hmm. And of course, you need to build up the amount of omega-3 you need if you've been lacking. But that's how drastic it was for us. Yeah. And so we've had to experiment with and fool around with many kinds of diets. We've done it with our animals too, continually for all these years. And so I bet that's why I have a lot of comments on the current diets. And I'd like to get into in another video into the differences in the guts and the stomach and the teeth and all the different types of animals and humans that help determine what they should eat, regardless of their environment. Still, our DNA may be turned on or off, but it hasn't really changed except for evolution, where there's people that live up north versus in the far south, or different places where they kind of evolved to have different DNA. But we still have human DNA, just like dogs still have wolf DNA. Okay, so back to the part on the far right, mm-hmm. The carnivores. Okay. You heard my beef that they don't have the same bodies in the same environment, and they're not, as the people who were pre-agriculture and pre-industry and pre-refrigeration, when they also ate the whole animal, usually raw, and probably had such a fantastic unpolluted immune system that they could handle parasites a whole lot better. And these animals were wild, so they're not even grocery store factory farm meat, and they're not also grass fed or pasture raised either. They're more wild than that. And everyone that I know of, every group like that I've heard of, will eat things like bugs, worms, bark of a tree, leaves, make all kinds of medicine out of plants too. And except for possibly, the people that lived on whale blubber and fish. Although in the fish, if they ate the whole thing, guess what the fish either ate or ate a fish that ate? Seaweed, which is the most potent vegetable. Yeah. And when an animal, if you look at my Kay's raw dog food and raw cat food video, you can see that I have some vegetables in there that are raw that get pureed in a Vitamix. But when an animal eats another animal, generally speaking, the first thing they eat is the intestines of the animal. And what's in the intestines of that usually it's a herbivore, and sometimes a bird, that's an omnivore. They eat the guts, and in the guts are the semi-pre-digested, full of enzymes, plant food. So even a wolf, in that sense, is not a complete carnivore. So I really wanted to cover this about carnivores because they're not getting, one of the improvements is they're not getting all the inflammatory ingredients and lectins and anti-nutrients. They're in anti-nutrients, phytotoxins that are in certain plant foods. And the worst ones of all are the grains, the beans, and the potatoes, especially the grains, and none of us should eat them. Even vegans. You do way better at not eating grains, eating more fatty vegan food if you're going to be a vegan. And so these people have eliminated that. For example, the nightshades alone are the most inflammatory, almost said anti-inflammatory. They're the most inflammatory of the vegetables. And technically some of them are actually a fruit vegetable. Some things we call vegetables are actually a fruit. And like tomatoes are really a fruit. Avocados are really a fruit. Yeah. Peanuts are really a bean. Cashews are really a bean. And peanuts happen to be moldy, and cashews happen to have higher carbs than most nuts.
And coffee is a fruit seed.
Yeah, and we call it coffee beans, right? And sweet potatoes and yams are not a potato. So, things are not as they appear. So, with these carnivores, these modern day carnivores, in our Western civilization with a bad, a polluted environment. Most of those people have had a history of medications and vaccines and so forth, and shopped out of a regular grocery store, eaten GMO in the past, if not currently. And when they remove the super inflammatory plant foods, then of course they're going to feel better. When the vegans remove the junk food, as they commonly do, they're going to feel better. And the thing is, even though you feel better now, what's going to happen down the line? Could there possibly be some deficiencies or malfunctions? With the carnivores, I'm concerned that they're not getting enough leafy greens of the kind that don't really have like a negative effect. My favorites would be, if you have to put something in a Vitamix or a blender, take dandelion, parsley, cilantro, and celery. And you could throw cabbage in there, but it tastes like a liquid fart. Cabbage is more enjoyed as sauerkraut or raw. But those are not high on oxalic acid to make stones. They're not the crucifer family, except the cabbage that I mentioned. They're not, things like the kale and broccoli and cauliflower that are in the crucifer family with cabbage that in excess are going to rob you of iodine. So if you take these super cleansing, and I suggest my favorite, dandelion, parsley, cilantro, and celery, they have very little issues compared to a lot of other super greens. They keep your cleansing system going. They clean your liver. They keep the gallbladder flushing. They keep the gallbladder from building up stones and sludge. And I believe that the people who are carnivores, especially if they're not in the same environment that they're comparing themselves to as other carnivores, I believe that they're going to eventually have a lack in certain minerals, and especially if they don't do seaweed and a really potent organic garden food that is, potent because somebody like me, if you watch my dandelion and my greens videos, I should even show you how to compost them. Compost their food, which becomes their main fertilizer. I think these people are going to have a lack in their system, and probably a lack of certain minerals because they're not going in the wild. They can't remove their history. They cannot remove the history of what they eat and how they're medicated, and the history of their pollution and even their genetics compared to the genetics of the areas where the people are currently doing it. And they're going to probably have some issue at some point. And here's the bottom line: they are not eating wild animals raw. Okay. And I wonder how many of them would eat bugs. What would you like to say?
So I would say you don't have any issue with people who are mostly carnivores.
No.
Or even who eat raw meat, like some of the people are doing nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Your issue is that if you're strictly a carnivore, you should take concern that maybe down the road you might have some nutrients that are missing. Much like the vegan diet, although it was cleansing and got everybody away from like white bread and candy bars and things like that. But they're going to have issues later on because they're not having these animal based fat soluble nutrients. Correct?
Well, the white bread and candy bars and all that too are probably what these carnivores got rid of.
Okay.
Some went from keto to carnivore, which I think I respect more because they had a better plan to start with, and they got rid of a lot of the crap to start with. But I think we should probably end this video soon, just because I don't want to make it too long. I really want to pick up with a whole lot more detail on the differences in the diets and the guts, the stomach, the teeth, and how we're different from the animals.
Yeah.
But we have all kinds of animals. We have herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. Okay. And even the carnivores somehow inadvertently get what's in the guts of the animal, and it's just usually plant food.
So stay tuned for part 2, right?
Yeah, stay tuned for part 2, and thanks for bearing with this. And I have so many more videos to make. I had a little bit of life disruption, and I meant to make more videos earlier, but I'm definitely going to do many parts of this How We Were Designed to Eat series.
Oh, very good.
Thank you.